Hi everyone, welcome to episode 11 of my chronic migraine life. I'm calling this one Sweating Bullets, and you'll find out why in just a sec. I wanted to include something I forgot in our last episode 10, Along Came a Spider. When I was talking about signs and symptoms of migraine or living with chronic migraine illness, I forgot one very important thing. I don't even know how I did. Blowing my nose. If you ever see me in real life, no matter the year, no matter if I'm sick or not, I will be blowing my nose. It's something about the pressure in the air. When it's going to rain, I can't stop. My nose is just pouring. It's disgusting, I know. But it always looks like I have a cold. So I'm always very open about when I'm around people that if you see me blowing my nose a lot, it's not because I'm sick. Perfectly safe to come in contact with you. But it's just a fact of life. Something about the pressure in in my head and the air and my sinuses all connected, right? So there's just that. But I'm calling this episode Sweating Bullets because that's what I really want to talk about, sweating. It is swamp ass season is upon us now, even in New York City. It's like 85 degrees today. Well, it feels like 85 degrees to me. I don't know what the actual temperature is, but I dread summer. I hate being hot. I've always been prone to being hot my whole life. But with my chronic migraine illness, it took on a whole different toll. Now, I haven't really talked specifically about the medication that I took over the course of these last 10 years, the preventative medication, but I want to talk specifically about nortriptyline. Nortriptyline I was on for many, many years. It made me gain a lot of weight. And it made me sweaty. Someone I know, my cousin actually, for keeping score, this is another Italian cousin I haven't discussed before. She and I spent a day several years ago at the Museum of Natural History, which I loved. And my sweating was at my highest on this medication. And it was so sensitive that I didn't even want to climb the stairs in the museum. If you've ever been to New York City, the Museum of Natural History is enormous. Gorgeous place. It's where they have all the dinosaurs and the big whale, if anybody's ever read anything about it. And I was so cautious, watching every step I took not to activate the sweating, that I didn't want to walk up the stairs. I was taking elevators wherever I could. Now, we did a lap around the 4th or 5th floor, wherever the dinosaurs are, and stopped at a cafe. Just take a break and chat. I was drenched. Now, when I say I had a sweating problem, I don't mean like, oof, there's a little drippage. I'm red. I'm always red. I'm half Irish. I get red as soon as I feel any kind of heat or pain. This was what I called malaria sweating. Just choked through your clothes. I always said that if I wore light gray, it would turn dark gray. And it was to the point of embarrassment. Now, normally I don't really care what other people think, but you see someone that looks overweight or is overweight and sweating, and what are you going to think? You're going to think that person's out of shape and out of breath, and maybe I was, but that wasn't the reason I was sweating, and not to that degree. And it was the kind of sweating where once you started, you couldn't stop. Through your clothes, down to your underwear is what I'm talking about. Like you'd have to shower, I would have to shower, ice cold, still be sweating in the shower, and then lie in front of an air conditioner to try to cool my body down before I could even put new clothes on. It was on a level that it's almost hard to describe. That was one of the worst things for me about having this illness and taking that medication. I bring up the museum because that's where my cousin told me that she knew someone else that had some kind of neurological disorder and had taken that pill, and they called it the fat and sweaty pill. And that was the first time that I linked my weight gain and the sweating increase to the drug. I didn't know about that at that time. And from there on forward, I called it the fat and sweaty pill because it's exactly what it did to me. It made me fat and sweaty. So much so that once I stopped taking that drug or started to wean off it, I lost about 50 pounds without doing anything different in my life. So that's substantial. The sweating has stopped, thank God. But to demonstrate the stigma that surrounds certain behaviors with invisible illnesses. And people won't know that you have an illness or disease, but they certainly can see the symptoms of it outwardly. and how you're judged for that and what that does to someone that's struggling emotionally every day anyway. So the two things that popped into my mind was a trip to Chicago I took in 2015. I love Chicago. I've been there many times. December of 2015, my brother and I went for our joint, we both have birthdays in December. We went to celebrate that. Super excited, starting to feel slightly better than I had in a long time. This was a big, exciting trip. JFK Airport in New York City is enormous, but what's even more enormous or feels more enormous is Chicago OHare Airport. I didn't check luggage that day. I was carrying a Vera Bradley bag that was not designed to walk long distances. It's very heavy and hard to carry because of the way the straps were. It really was a poor choice. But of course, I didn't know that till I was already in the airport. I remembered this particular incident. I mean, I never forgot it, but the cousin I mentioned before about being in the museum with, I saw her last week, and we started talking about things, and when I brought up this memory, I got really choked up, and I was surprised by it because I guess when you remember certain things, you're remembering what you felt in the moment. Even when you knew it was irrational or it didn't matter. See, it's going to happen to me again now. You feel sorry for that version of yourself, for that person that knew better and knew all the things that people say, doesn't matter, just take care of yourself. But in that moment, you wanted to appear normal. Well, my brother and I were walking through Chicago O'Hare, and I guess we were at the ass end of the airport and trying to get out towards the front, and he stopped to go to the bathroom. I was thrilled because I got to put my bag down and take a breath. At this point, now it's December in Chicago, it was mild, but I was pouring sweat. And the airport, of course, was not hot. I sat down at the chair in the airport, took out a pocket fan that I had carried with me, and just tried to mop up my face. I mean, I would sweat out my hair. I never got my hair blow dried professionally, almost ever, because I would sweat it out. Like, I would have to wash my hair like 20 minutes later. Forget if I danced at a party or had a cocktail. I wasn't allowed to drink back then. Again, a pill-related issue. And it just would have been off the charts. I was sitting, and I was just miserable. And I was extremely self-conscious and embarrassed and aggravated that I already felt like this and hadn't done anything yet. And I'll never forget their faces. They were a group of guys, like sitting directly across from me waiting for a flight or whatever the hell they were doing. And they were just staring at me. Just staring at me. Like I was a creature behind bars at a zoo. And I knew what I looked like. I was so red from being that hot, I would almost turn purple. It was past the point of a red face. And just stretched, and it was constant pouring. I'm not talking like, oh, you get sweating, and you're like, oh, it's going to stop. I mean, it just would keep coming and coming and coming. Floods of sweat, really. And it took every fiber of my being to look away from them so that I wouldn't, I knew what they were thinking, and I knew what other people would be thinking. People are staring. And it was just a low emotional point because people with chronic illness, you work so hard not to be seen as your disease or to be aware and want people to be aware that you are more than your illness. But sometimes you're really not. And I struggle with that, and I will continue to struggle with that I am more than my illness in many ways, but my illness will always be a big part of who I am, whether I'm doing well or not, or having a good day or not. It'll be what I'm known for. It'll be what's associated with me. It's intrinsically linked to who I am. And it's a push-pull kind of relationship. You don't want to be known for it, but then in the same breath, once you start not to feel well, you sort of want people to be hyper-aware that you don't feel well, especially by the time you finally get the courage to say, I'm not feeling good, I gotta sit down. You want people to react, but sensitively. Maybe it's a lot to ask. I don't know. My brother came out of the bathroom, saw that I was getting upset, and said, "Don't worry about it, Donna, it's fine." And it was fine, but it was aggravating as fuck. Like, needless to say, that trip to Chicago ended up being wonderful for a lot of reasons. One, of course, I got to show my brother a city that I love very, very much. We had a really great time. But also because it was the first time in a long time I could do a lot of walking. Now, of course, like I said, I was still sweating. And it was like maybe in the 50s that day, that weekend in Chicago. I was wearing a sweatshirt and like a long sleeve shirt, and that was totally fine. People were still bundled. I had gloves, I think, because it's windy as fuck in Chicago. They're right about that. But I walked. I walked from one end of Chicago to the other, stopping along the way to show my brother all the places I love and the great things to see and do in Chicago. And it was a feeling of victory. I walked the entire length of the Magnificent Mile from Millennium Bridge all the way down to the Field Museum. If you look on the map, it's pretty far. Like I said, it took all day. We stopped a lot of places to do a lot of things. But I remember once I got to the Field Museum, sitting outside, and just that sense of like, wow. It was a moment where I really stopped to smell the roses, as it were. But for me, it was stopped to say, look, my body is starting to function. I can do things. And little did I know at that time it would only be about maybe 7 or 8 months before I'd go on my first solo vacation to Amsterdam and Paris. I hadn't traveled by myself, especially in a long time. And I'm a person that likes to do things by myself. I'm good by myself. I like myself normally. And so it was a real sign of things to come. The sweating, when it was at its worst, was probably about 2013. 2012 is the only year in my last 15 or so that I never left. Well, I left my house, but I never went on vacation, not even to a place you could drive an hour and a half from my house. And that is a sign of something being wrong with me. I love to travel. I love to see things. I love to do things. I have an annual to-do list every year on my blog, even just to see things in New York City or in the tri-state area. I just love exploring, and I like having a good time, and I'm very easily pleased. When I'm in a place that's historic or fun or charming and with people that I like, and I get to show off things that I've researched and see it in real life, there's really no feeling better for me. I'm flying high, like on a plane I can never imagine. Like it's what I live for. It's the passion of my life. That's why I started my blog, to hopefully inspire others. So in 2013, I planned a mother-daughter vacation. It was my mother and myself and my neighbor and her daughter, who's my age. And we were going to Savannah in June. Now, right off the bat, I knew it was a mistake because Georgia is 1,000,000 degrees. I'm 1,000,000 degrees now, and at that point, I was a person that was more heat sensitive than I had been in that airport in Chicago in 2015. So 2 years before. But I just wanted to go. I wanted to go to Savannah for a really long time, and there's a sale on airfare. We were going to go as a group and have a really good time, and I just really wanted to. I always plan out my itineraries really detailed. I have Excel spreadsheets, gives my family members anxiety when they see it, but it's because I always want to know where I'm going, why I'm there, and remembering to do and get whatever it is I want when I'm finally there. So, 2013, another airport incident. Only this time, it was before I even got on the plane to fly to Savannah. The pocket fan that I had with me broke as soon as I got to the gate, which is when I needed it. Airport security was always a bitch pre-TSA for me because you're on that long line, you have to carry your stuff, you take off your shoes and whatever, and puddle. This is where the fun began. We get to Savannah, and it's just nightmarishly hot. Like, you would open the door and smack you right in the face, the humidity. You couldn't even breathe. And I know that the people with me who didn't have my illness or the pills I was taking still felt this. The entire weekend in Savannah, I never felt cool. Not in the shower, not in the hotel, not anywhere. The thing about stigma of chronic illness is that you do it to yourself too, because once you feel dehumanized or demoralized, it's easy to see why other people would notice that first in you. Savannah's a great walking city. We're sitting right in the city central. There's a lot of squares. Every few feet there's a little park square with this grass and benches and beautiful historic monuments. So we were going to be doing a lot of walking. I took a few cabs when I shouldn't have needed to, but needed to because I couldn't. I was carrying a very heavy camera, my messenger bag around my neck, annoying. And I was miserable the entire time. Even now, side note, I didn't love Savannah as much as other people thought I would love Savannah. But I always still think of it and have like this, ache in my side. I feel like I need to go back and redo it to prove something to myself, maybe. Or just be able to let it go. Be able to take the experiences for where they were. Sure, I didn't get to do all of the things on my list by far, and the things that I didn't enjoy as much as I could have because of what I was feeling like, and that bothers me because I know how precious experiences are and I want to savor them, and I'm really good at always seeing the silver lining. If there were parts of a trip that were bad, or even like, people look at pictures of things like, oh God, I hate the way I look in that picture. I'm really able to see past that and see that this was the moment that I did this. This is the moment that I saw so-and-so or whatever. And Fort Savannah is a place I'm still struggling to come to with that. The people that I was with were really incredible. And there are people in my life that still in my life that are always able to not judge me and make me feel supported when I'm at my lowest. And that's really rare. I never take it for granted. But during the day, or even at night, I was walking and I was just trying to control the sweat and the misery that came with it. I had baby wipes on me and I kept wiping my face because I just wanted something cool to just mop up the sweat. That was a gigantic mistake because baby wipes have, I don't even think they were baby wipes. They were like, those little like travel size wipes that you buy that you're probably supposed to wipe down like tables with, but I was putting them on my face just out of desperate need because I would go through so many tissues and napkins trying to mop up my neck, my forehead. It just wasn't controlling enough. And I was so hot. That seemed like the best thing. It was a mistake. I got burned, like red scarring burned from the chemicals that weren't in it, the sweat, the sun. I have no idea. It was a mistake. The real problem with Savannah is that I didn't have the tools that I would come to find out about or learn about or research about that I then, from that point on till the sweating went under control for about 3 years, to manage it properly. And that's a big regret of mine, but my bad, I didn't know. I have now come to find some things I'm going to share with you sometime soon. I want to make a list because it's very important to find things that aren't doing further harm to yourself. So I was just making it worse. I don't know if it was the second night. It had to be the second night in Savannah. I think we were there 3 nights. And we stopped at a square. I felt like every few feet I walked, I had to stop at a bench in the square. While everybody else is like just sort of waiting. Nobody said anything. They were perfectly fine. But it was my fault that we were stopping. It was my fault that we weren't doing all of these other things. And it drove me up a wall. I broke down hysterical crying on a bench in a park square outside of CVS. I was miserable. I was pissed. And there wasn't anything I could do about it. My neighbor put her hand on my shoulder and said, Donna, it's no big deal. We're in no hurry. You want to sit? You need to sit? We'll sit. In that moment, I don't think she knew what a great gift she was giving me. She was giving me permission to be as sick as I was. I still felt like shit. I was still torturing myself and berating myself on the inside. But I knew when she said it, she meant it. And that was important. Crucial. She made me feel loved, secure, understood. And seen. And seen not because of what my illness was doing to me, what my disease and drugs trying to combat it were doing to me, but really the warrior, the chronic migraine warrior I was, even when I didn't feel like it. That permission that sometimes we can't give ourselves, that we need others to give us. In the right moment, in the right words, in the right intention, changes everything. Absolutely everything. I've been sick around those two ladies many times since. And every time I knew it was okay. I wasn't being judged. And it's helped me be more comfortable and more open. And whether they know it or not, the depths of my connection to them just because of that. There's that saying, I'm so sick and tired of being sick and tired. That was me. I was so tired of being sick and sweaty. Golden Girls fans out there, one of my favorite episodes, there's 2 parts episode, I don't have no idea what season it is, when Dorothy goes through chronic fatigue syndrome. Dorothy's the character I relate to most just because I think we have a lot in common. And when she is going through all the symptoms and she's being told by doctors are worse than everyday people, that there's nothing wrong with her, it's in her head, and until they figure out what's actually wrong with her, you start to feel crazy. And it's the love and support of her friends, as she says at the end of the 2nd episode, that made being sick a little more bearable. And that sums up my story exactly. Sometimes you just need to surrender to it, allow it, let it pass over you. And look to the people that aren't judging you, that are loving you anyway. We're making being sick and sweaty, a little more bearable. So, for you 2 ladies out there, I hope you see this. I'm going to probably show it to you myself. I want you to know that you made being sick and sweaty a lot more bearable for me. And fun, even when I didn't feel like I could have any moments of fun. So, that's it. Take care. Stay migraine free.